On this week's episode of the podcast, we have Catherine Cummings on. We touch base on her unique background in hunting stemming from her upbringing in upstate New York, her development of her strong bond with her first bird dog, Otto, as well as her career focusing on education and wildlife management in Iowa. Thank you for tuning in and listening to her story. You can also find her on Instagram under Cookie Cummings. To see the video version of the episode with added pictures, you can find it on the Lonesome Willow Gun Dogs channel on YouTube. On this week's episode, I have Catherine Cummings. I met her out in Iowa in November when we went for, I think it was November.
Yeah, I was trying to think like, oh gosh, that was a long time ago.
Yeah, it feels like forever ago.
It does.
So my first question for everybody is, how did you get into hunting?
Cool. Yeah, I feel like I have a fairly unique story just given that I grew up in upstate New York. My parents are both from New York City, and so they had no real experience with hunting. We always let folks come and hunt on our property, which was always super interesting to me. I remember climbing into deer tree stands that were set up in our woods, but I really wasn't necessarily exposed to actually harvesting myself until I was getting my master's down at Auburn.
I was looking through your Instagram before I got on here, and I saw a lot of waterfowl and then a lot of deer. So, what do you think is your favorite out of what you've done so far?
Yeah, what I'll say is I have absolutely loved upland hunting and having a dog and just building that relationship. So, lucky for me, my fiance got a puppy right when we started really dating and me coming to Iowa a lot more frequently. And so I got to be there from, the start of him being an 8-week-old puppy up until he's just about 2 now. So that's probably my favorite is just taking him out in the field, letting him do all of the work. We have a pointing breed, so it's just really fulfilling and it's been really great to see him grow over the years. That's probably my favorite because you get interaction from your dog and experiencing that. I love going out with other people's dogs and seeing how they work. It's definitely been a confidence builder for our dog too. When it's just him, it's a lot of pressure for just one dog to figure it all out and find all the birds. But he's definitely grown a ton just in this last season alone, which has just been really rewarding. I was pretty lucky in Iowa this year. I harvested my first 2 whitetail deer bucks, I should say, which was super cool, super unique. That was really rewarding, but it took a lot more work than bird hunting. Bird hunting, I can throw my dog and a gun in the car and drive 20 minutes and take him out. And even if it's not successful, I'm still having that really great experience with him, getting him out and just getting him exercise so he's quiet in the house at least.
Oh, moving into your career, what do you do when you're not hunting?
Yeah. So I currently am the chronic wasting disease outreach specialist for Iowa State University and Iowa DNR. And basically, how I explain that to folks is that I do deer disease education across the state. So this past year, I think I had 40 different outreach events where I went to 20 different counties and spoke to over 2,000 Iowans about deer diseases, specifically chronic wasting disease, and then also hemorrhagic diseases, and kind of the impacts that it's had on populations the last couple years, and how hunters and landowners can, help us discover the disease as well as monitor and manage it. So that's what I'm currently doing. I also have a really big role in our CWD surveillance for the state. So I think this year I pulled close to 300 samples, which are, I'm meeting up with hunters or landowners that find sick deer or I'm pulling roadkill, but sampling their lymph nodes out of their neck, just pulling those, sending them to the lab, which is quite a lot and definitely takes a ton of time. I think I was in the top 3 people from the department to submit samples this year, which was kind of crazy. But actually, starting next Friday, I'm transitioning into a new role. So I'll be the Western Iowa wildlife depredation biologist. So essentially, working with human wildlife conflict, anything from urban wildlife conflict, think like geese or deer or other problem species or nuisance, I would say, all the way up through producers. So agriculture producers, yeah, Otto's just outside. I left the door open for him. But working with agriculture producers, high value commodity crops, so tree nurseries, vineyards, orchards to kind of manage any deer issues on their property. So that will be next week, which will be pretty exciting to kind of transition into that role. And I'll basically be covering the western third of the state, which will be a lot of driving. So a lot of time to listen to podcasts and books and get busy.
Yes, yes. And I saw in February you had a pretty kick-ass day. You were flying around counting deer.
Well, yeah, yeah. So I was fortunate enough that actually the previous Western depredation biologist, he wasn't able to go. So he texted me. This was before I even applied for the job, but he texted me and asked if I wanted to fly the urban aerial deer counts over the Des Moines metropolitan. So basically going up in helicopters when there's snow on the ground and counting deer, which is harder and easier than you think. We did it a little later when we had snow, so you actually have to look down at every deer bed and see if there's a deer. So look for ears moving or a deer getting up. So that made it a little tougher, but once you actually see one, then they're easy to count. You know what you're looking for then. But those counts are super cool. The DNR only does those, in years we have good snow, so they haven't been done for the past couple of years, but this year we had a couple of good snows allowed us to get out there. And then those population counts influence our urban archery hunts. So, how many tags are allocated and kind of the trends of populations, which is super cool.
Okay. And do you archery and then do you rifle hunt too?
Yeah, so I archery hunted, this was my first year archery hunting. So it took a ton of time and practice. I'm lucky enough that I live pretty close to an indoor range, like less than 5 minute drive. So I went there probably 4 days a week minimum. And I'm someone that I just want to take like 12 shots and be done for a session. So it's great that I live close. So I took a lot of time archery hunting. I had a pretty up and down season as far as learning a lot and then also like failures leading into success. So that was kind of a whirlwind. That was really exciting. And then I actually muzzleloader hunted. So Iowa has an early muzzleloader season, which occurs kind of earlier in the year. It's in October, so pre-rut out here. But it kind of gives you access to deer that have only had archery pressure on them. So deer that haven't been exposed to our gun seasons out here. And I like that just because there's a lot of deer driving out here during our gun seasons. So it's about a 50-50 split on folks that sit in a tree stand for gun season or actually drive the property. And I'm a fully public land hunter. I have no private access here, allowing myself to be safe out there. And I also don't want to be out there when it's snowing personally. So I'll take that early season when it's 70 degrees.
Did you like muzzleloader hunting?
I did. I wasn't sure if I would, but I found it to be really fun. I lucked out too that I harvested my first buck during early muzzleloader season, so it was beginning of October, and I had been scouting for like numerous weeks beforehand. We were seeing 40 to 50 deer in our willow bottoms on the public land because there was a lot of flooding that occurred, which just allowed for really good habitat to grow for deer to be in those willow bottoms after the flood kind of cleared. And then, of course, season starts and there's like no deer that come out. Of course, that's just always how it works. You scout somewhere and you're very confident going in, and then you sit there for the first day. And I saw, I think, a spike and one or two does in the morning. And I went back to the same spot in the evening and really didn't see anything. Like, wasn't seeing the same deer behavior or patterns, just in a 1 day difference, which I thought was kind of crazy. And right at last light, I had a deer come out, and I was pretty open to harvesting like any type of buck for my first buck. I wasn't very particular. We're pretty reliant on venison in this household. So I had a buck come out, like he must have been like 2 minutes before last light, and I glassed him up quick and I was like, it's got antlers, like that's all I knew. And after I took my shot, my fiance called me and he's like, did he go down? Like, how big was it? And I was like, I think he went down. I have no clue how big it is, which was kind of a really neat surprise. It ended up being a pretty weird 6 point. He had 2 on one side and 4 on the other. So just kind of unique, but it was really exciting. And I was glad to kind of experience that season. And I like the not cold weather. I don't want to be sitting in the snow personally.
Out in PA here, we have it's late season, so after rifle goes through, we have muzzleloader out here.
Yeah. Have you done it before?
I have not, but my husband goes out every year, him and a bunch of his buddies. So I
Cool.
thought about maybe going out one of these years with him.
What's nice about muzzle loaders is you can almost tweak how much powder you put in, which, impacts the kickback and everything associated with that. So we sighted my gun in for, I was very confident at 100 yards and it had no kick, which I really liked personally. um, you know, easier on the shoulder than some rifles, unless you have a higher end.
He always, I know some people have this problem, but he always like closes his eyes whenever after he goes to shoot.
Yeah, I'm very notorious for that. I blink really hard, which is a habit I'm trying really hard to break. It's what happened to me was I took the shot and I saw I hit him. And I like looked down for a second to grab my binoculars so I could watch. And by the time I put them up, I was like, "Oh my gosh, I don't see him at all," which made me a little worried. But he actually, by the time I must have picked up the binoculars, he had already fallen down. But then it's like the anticipation of like, okay, should we wait longer? Should I go out and check? Like, I don't really know. That was kind of both my bucks. I waited quite a while, which leads to anticipation, leads to you questioning like, was it an ethical shot? Was it a good shot? But both of my bucks were down very, very quick, which was, good for me at least. I didn't have much worry of, hurting them or not having a ethical shot.
And then you said you guys rely on venison pretty hard at your house.
Yes. Um, Between my fiance and I this year, we harvested 4 white-tailed deer in Iowa, and then he went out to South Dakota and got a mule deer. So we have 5 deer just for the two of us. And then we do all home processing. So this year we made like venison pepperoni, jerky, just ground, steaks and everything. And then we also made breakfast sausage, venison bacon, I can't even remember everything, but quite a few more things too. But then it's nice, we go on turkey camps and we can provide breakfast for everyone. We pretty much eat venison at every meal. I wish we harvested more ducks. This year was a low migration, low production year. At least here in Iowa, it was a lot more difficult to get on ducks if you didn't have a boat. So that made it difficult. And then pheasants, we had a pretty good season. So we definitely mix in different meat sources, but I don't even remember the last time we really bought meat at a grocery store, to be honest, unless it was like cold cuts or something. But most of the full meals we're eating are entirely venison.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's a big thing. We've been talking about it a lot since he works for the DNR too. That's been what we're seeing is like a big push towards people moving to hunting is this idea of sustainable locally sourced meat that you can provide for your family yourself. And we're definitely seeing that push here in Iowa too. I'm definitely included on it. It's just great to know where that meat came from and that, we process all ourselves. So I'm very picky with meat. Like if there's any hard piece or connective tissue or anything, I get weirded out. So I can be super particular on how I'm cleaning the meat and making sure it's kind of up to my uniquely high standards.
That's what we either have venison or our friend has a farm. So we usually get a cow every other
Nice.
year and he raises it with his and then we send him off to the butcher so we know where our meat came from. And
That's awesome. We definitely want to get a cow or part of a cow eventually. This year it was just a interesting year. We're in the process of like trying to buy a house and move, so we want to have as little in our freezer by the time we're moving as possible, so we don't have to move it all. So that too, we're trying to definitely eat up all our meat right now.
so with your ducks that you're getting, how do you cook those? Because I know some people say duck isn't good. Some people say you got to cook it a certain way.
Yep. Um, Ducks, we really just make gumbo, honestly. So I'll say right now, my fiance is totally the like wild game chef in our household. Definitely not me. I kind of watch what he does and I can pick up and, I make a ton of dishes, but mostly just with ground or steaks. Like he does all of the ducks. So he actually rendered all of the fat off the ducks we harvested, which We pretty much hunt early season ducks just up until we can upland hunt. So they're not too fat at that time, but it's just nice to kind of render that fat down and have that to use. And then he honestly just, throws it all in a pot with gumbo. We'll get sausage to put in. And I think that's like the best way and my favorite way of eating duck personally. I know some people sometimes make poppers with duck, but I've also done red wine reduction sauce on it, which I thought has been pretty good. Just pan searing it. But the gumbo is definitely our go-to and kind of when we make duck for people, that's usually what we're making.
Okay. So you got Otto. So Otto's your first bird dog then.
Yeah, Otto's my first personal bird dog. My fiance had a Boykin Spaniel before him, and she unfortunately passed away at 3. She went into like severe kidney failure, and he ended up having to euthanize her. And at the time after she passed, we were like, okay, we're not getting a dog soon. She was a dog from down south. So when he brought her up to Iowa, she was not very well built for the cold. She liked early season teal hunting and she liked, pheasant hunting, but definitely the cold got to her. She was tiny. She was like 25 pounds. So that was, his personal bird dog and I met her and I never hunted with her, but she passed away at 3. We decided like, okay, we don't think we're gonna get a dog anytime soon. And I remember he sent me a link to the poodle pointer breeder we used, and I was like, yeah, I mean, you can look at them, but I just don't think we're in a place to get a dog right now. It was a pretty heartbreaking loss of his dog that he spent 3 years training and working very closely with. And he went and visited the breeder, and that day was like, nope, we're getting one. And yeah, Otto's a poodle pointer. He's from Paladin Gun Dogs up in Fairmont, Minnesota. And when I saw pictures of them, they're bearded, wire hair, brown dogs. And I told him, that's fine, but we have to get a male. I was like, we have to get a male if this dog's going to have a beard. Just weird preference. And my fiance was all for it. He wanted a hard charging, strong male just to try it out. He's always been around female dogs. So he definitely wanted to try it out. We definitely met our match with Otto. He is a very strong, will-powered male, ready to kind of hard charge. Now that he's been neutered, it's a lot better, I'd say. He's definitely calmed down a ton. But yeah, we got him. He was actually born 2 years ago in a couple weeks, so he's just about to turn 2. And we got him in June of 2023, so just I can't believe how fast time's going, but we did all the training ourselves and I think he's coming around. He went out his first year, he was retrieving ducks at 5 months old, and that was pretty shocking to me. For him, it took him a little longer just to get the point. I think just because he was versatile, because he was retrieving ducks earlier, just maybe it wasn't clicking as naturally for him, but he's definitely picked up the point, and I'm really happy with his progress. I try to just be really, lenient with him and kind of let him do his thing out in the field and just see what he can get after. But he's definitely a hard charging male. He loves to hunt. He gets really mad if I leave him in the truck when we're running other dogs or whatnot, but he loves to nap too, so he wants those naps between the all day hunts at least. But he's been a really good boy. He's definitely developing over the time. So I love to see it in him.
So have you traveled anywhere to hunt then?
We've just done Iowa, but we drive all over Iowa. We really want to take him out probably to South Dakota this year. We have some family out there, so do some, grouse hunting, do some, oh, I guess we've taken him grouse hunting, but do some grouse hunting, do some pheasant hunting out in South Dakota. But I guess I didn't even think we've taken him to Wisconsin to grouse hunt. That's where my fiance is from, so just running around in the woods. He went probably 3 or 4 times this year, and by our last trip, he was pointing grouse, which was super cool to see. But very different than pheasant hunting in Iowa. We're walking in the woods rather than in a grass prairie, and that's definitely, I'd say, Otto's confidence in the woods is it's building, but it wasn't there when we started. He likes to have a visual eyesight of where we are. He'll run big, but he still wants to be able to look over and see you. If he gets a little scared, he's actually probably not a good habit, but if he gets in like super tall grass and can't see me and he's 200 yards away, he'll bark until I call for him and he'll come running back, which I think is funny. I like it. That way he knows crap, I'm lost. Like, let me see where she is. I can make my way back. But yeah, mostly just Iowa for now, and then Wisconsin a couple times for grouse this year.
Okay. What has your favorite hunt been then?
Ooh. My fiance probably won't like me saying this, but honestly, the Iowa ladies hunt, it was such a great experience meeting so many folks in the bird dog field, being able to, meet Steve, meet Jared, get out on private land. Like that's just the best hunting you can ask for is private access here in Iowa that holds a lot of birds, especially Western Iowa. And yeah, just seeing everyone's dogs that were there working together, like the people there working together. That probably was my favorite. I think you actually missed it when you were dealing with your asthma attack, but
Oh yeah.
it's like the first time that we were up on this hill, like coming back to the trucks, and Otto stuck a point, and I was like, there's no way there's a pheasant. Like, no way. It was short grass. I was like, there's just no way. And I kind of like tried to send him, and everyone's like, no, like, you just go up and flush it. I was like, there's no bird there. Like, he's just scent pointing. Like, let's just go. And a rooster got up right in front of him, and I shot, and he retrieved it right to hand. It was like the best experience to see him like click all of the steps together and put them together. I remember I texted my fiance, and he's like, that's the first time he's done all those together. I was like, I know. And it was for me, uh, which was just funny. I always say he loves hanging out with me because I work from home, so we just hang out all the time. So we definitely have that good connection there. But I've really liked he's definitely developed his in the field behaviors with me too. There was a point where he wouldn't hunt for me in the field his first year, just I think because he was used to, direction from my fiance, but it's been just really great, yeah, seeing him grow. But definitely that Iowa ladies hunt was probably my favorite. Just really good experience, really good exposure for everyone's dogs, and just meeting, yeah, a bunch of folks from all over the country.
Well, you guys were on the other side, and
Yep.
then me and Kate were still on this side. And Archer had gone on point, and I was like, I don't like it was just a little hump thing. And then Rosie went over and she flushed it for him, and it was a hen. And then she came back because Archer just like moved an inch and he went back on point. And I was like, what is he doing? And then she came back down the hill and she went in and flushed another hen from him.
That's awesome. No, it's just so great to see them really develop it and hold those points, and that's what I love. Like having a pointing dog is great, especially when they can pin those birds down, hold them down for you, and you can get in and hopefully get a decent shot.
I think the Iowa ladies trip was good for everybody's dogs. 'Cause there was a lot of young dogs there,
Oh yeah. Yeah,
especially in our group.
it was really great for Otto. I mean, his confidence after that was skyrocketed, I swear. We try to hunt, as many days as we can, and we found this one property that just must have really been overlooked by a lot of people. And every time we went, I'm not the best shot, but my fiance is, and he shot his limit every time over a dog, which I was like, gosh, I need to get to the range and practice. I'm just not as quick pulling up my gun and being ready. But it was just really great to see that confidence that was built in the dog and myself being there with him. And having him hold points was just really great.
I don't think I pulled up, but I don't think I shot at all on the trip.
Oh, wow, not at all?
No, I didn't shoot at
Wow,
all.
that's funny.
But I know Archer got some retrieves for it. But no, I didn't shoot at all. I was just kind of like going with the flow and watching and
That's funny. Yeah,
taking
that's
it in.
funny. Yeah, I think I got two on, gosh, it must have both been that Sunday morning. Because Saturday was just so windy. Birds were getting up
Yeah.
150 plus yards away, which made it really hard. But yeah, I think Sunday I harvested both of the ones I got. The one was auto pointed, and then the other I was next to Amy, and she kept telling me she was gonna shoot if I didn't, and that put like good panic on me, which I used
Yeah.
for like the rest of the season, which I liked. Being able to be like, oh, okay, someone's next to me. They're gonna do this if I don't. I have to be ready. So that was good pressure, I would say. So yeah, it was just that hunt was great just for all of the dogs, but then all the people there. I just feel like it helped build, confidence being out there and being able to, you know, run our dogs, be confident with our dogs, and be confident with ourselves.
So, was that your favorite part of the trip then? Was the you and Otto getting the bird?
Probably, yeah. Or I always loved too when everyone, couldn't find a bird, they'd be like, "Send Otto over here." It's like, gosh, this dog was just built to be a retriever. That's his favorite part. Um, I don't know if you saw it, but when Brianna's setter got one of the birds and it was like really, I think one of her first really good retrieves, Otto went over and took the bird out of her mouth, took it right out because he wanted to bring it back, which I was like, gosh, come on, let this one dog that never never retrieves to have the glory of doing it. But he loves retrieving. It's his absolute favorite thing. Uh, yeah. But that was probably, yeah, my favorite. Just having everything click and being out there with a bunch of folks too that were there to celebrate it.
What did he get the I can't remember what dog got it, but when we were at the end of Saturday and we went back to Steve's farm
Hmm.
and we were up in that by the silo and Buck and Archer went on point
Yep.
and then the bird went up and was it Bree that
Yep.
shot it
Shot that
and
was
like
crazy.
exploded it?
Yeah, yeah. And I think we were all like, no way that she actually hit that. Because it was just straight 90 degrees above her. Which I was like, I don't know how you got that. I think I'm trying to remember. I don't remember if the bird fell inside or outside that fence, but I know he was outside of it. I think he didn't get it and he was freaking out because he didn't. Because like I said, this dog loves retrieving. Chase down, if he hears a gunshot, he's gonna go try to find where that bird went. Which for him, is disappointing when he goes out with me and I miss a lot. He gets a little grumpy and upset from that sometimes.
I think they all do.
Oh yeah.
I I gotta get my stock cut down on my gun this year. I miss too much and it's way too long for me. It's like 2 inches too long. But for some reason, if I go out with one of my buddies, Brandon, if I go out with him, like I shoot the bird. And I think it's because I have someone with me and I'm like,
Yep.
I can't, like,
A little
I gotta
competitive.
get it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say that with my fiance, but he just is so quick. But he's been hunting for 20 years, so hard to kind of make that comparison between us. But I always tell him that, like, you just gotta give me one extra second. Like, I'm just not as quick, not as quick to react because I'm usually trying to like think about like, oh gosh, in Iowa you can only shoot roosters, so like, is that a rooster getting up? Can I shoot? It's not just a bird getting up, which adds that little bit more of an element of having to just be ready to have it up and not pull
Yeah.
the trigger, which feels weird at times. So definitely a added bit of complexity here.
Yes, because back in PA, we have the released pheasants through the state game commission, and they're roosters and hens. So they release both, and we can just shoot both.
That's nice.
Well, whenever those hens were going up, I was like, and then they're like, no, hen. And I was like, oh shit, I
Yeah.
can't shoot these here.
Yep, yep. No, it definitely gets a little nerve-wracking because you're like, oh gosh, like I can't shoot, but sometimes like you're like, I just wish I could just like we always joke like I wish there was just one day a week you could shoot hens. Because sometimes like
Hmm.
especially by end of season you get out on a property and all the roosters have been bumped and they're a lot more jumpy, so you're not getting as clear shots on them or you're just not close enough. So sometimes you're like, I just wish one day a week we could just shoot a couple hens. Like, but I always got great, nest survival and like reproduction, good success usually. So usually always a couple that come back.
Do you think that's due to more private land?
There's a lot of pheasant hunters here, and the DNR, estimates kind of how many pheasants get harvested, but we don't have to report, which is to me, I'm like, oh, I wish we could report just that way we had a better idea of how many birds were actually getting harvested and what does it look like across the landscape. But definitely private lands play a part in it. I think a big thing here is there's a lot of prescribed burns, so there's new prairies being developed and regrowth kind of over the years, which I think really helps. All of our public lands have leash laws, so you can't have your dogs off leash from March 15th to July 15th for all nesting birds. So that plays a part too, which is great for the birds, bad for someone with a bird dog. We can't let them run around off leash wherever we want. There's a few select places that we go that you can, but you know, that plays a role into making sure you're exercising your dog another way. So there's definitely a lot of factors. And then, I mean, you saw Iowa's got a lot of corn, so a lot of food around for birds, but definitely helps them be kind of prolific here, reproduce well, and get back out on the landscape. They move around a ton, which is probably similar to Pennsylvania, but I really like early season. I'm all about the early season hunting if you can't tell, but walking in a ton of snow through cattails on ice can sometimes get a little dicey. Not always my favorite, but it's fun for the pheasants, like getting into pheasants on cattails, but not walking around on frozen wetlands. So it's fun to kind of chase birds through different habitat. But I'd say, yeah, definitely habitat plays a role. You know, our leash laws, not allowing dogs off leash on those properties, and then definitely private lands too, and just habitat management.
So was Iowa your first ladies hunt?
Yes. I had done two other first time hunter programs. So that first one was the Delta Waterfowl. That was down in Alabama when I was there. And it was through the university and it was super cool. Again, like got to get out, shoot a gun, which I hadn't really done before that. So that was good to get that experience. Unfortunately, there were absolutely no ducks that came in, but I got to hang out with these landowners, which was just a really great experience down there. Um, and to me, like duck hunting is probably one of the hardest because there's just a lot going on and you have to be, you know, almost hyper aware of the situation and when you can shoot and you know that you should you let the ducks come in all the way or just a lot more factors. All of the gear to get out there, all of the setup and takedown. So that was kind of like my first hunt. I think there was only maybe one or two guys that came on that. So kind of a ladies hunt, but not really. And then I did another mentored hunt through the Alabama Department of Conservation and Natural Resources for first time deer hunters, which was a really good experience. That was a mix of guys and gals, but again, just really good experience. I got to sit in a blind with a game warden and kind of get walked through the whole deer hunting process. I harvested two deer there, which was super cool. A doe and then a button buck, but it was just, yeah, a really good experience. And then, yeah, this year, you know, it was actually our breeder shared Steve's post about the ladies hunt. And I saw that and I was like, and I have to do that. It actually worked out perfectly because it was the weekend my fiance was going to South Dakota. And so I was like, perfect, I can take Otto and we'll just have a fun time pheasant hunting. So I hope it happens again because it was a really fun experience. I know Steve and I have just been kind of chatting on and off. I really want one of his dogs too, so.
I saw he has another litter on the ground.
Oh, I know. We're just not in a position to get a puppy. We definitely want one, probably when Otto's 4, I think. Kind of let Otto have his good glory years before we bring a puppy into the mix, but I really want one. Every time I see a litter. Sorry?
You guys aren't going to be stuck on, you're not stuck on poodle pointers then.
No, I think we probably want to try quite a few breeds. I'd really like a Picardy Spaniel, but the cost and the few dogs that are in the country makes it not a wise decision, I think, for us. It's Picardy. They're from France. They're super cool, and there's a couple breeders here in the US, but they told me I talked to one and he told me about 3,500. And who knows what prices would look like in a couple years. Which that's just a lot of money. Obviously a bird dog's a tool and you know, the almost like the more you spend on your tool, the probably higher quality you'll get. Yeah, I've been really impressed with Otto. We definitely want to try a new breed though. We're trying to mix it up, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, because he's got English setters.
Yup.
And these guys kind of remind me of, this is what you're talking about, right?
Yup. They remind me a lot of Gordon setters.
That's what I was going to say,
definitely
Gordon.
A little smaller, not that much smaller, but I've always liked English setters, and you know, after I saw Buck and Reggie work, I was like texting my fiance like, yeah, I think this is the right call, which he said I get free reign to pick the next breed. lucky for him, I was like, yeah, I think I just want to stay local, use Steve. I love how Reggie and Buck work. They both retrieve birds. They were really hard charging in the field, but really mellow dogs for personality, which I really liked. They weren't high strung males. Before we got auto neutered, it was almost like, gosh, was a male a mistake? Which I wouldn't say so, but at the time he was just so high energy, so high strung. I mean, he wouldn't sleep for more than 10 minutes unless he was in his kennel. Now he's like the laziest dog ever, unless we're going out.
I think
Which,
it's more with age too.
yes, for sure, for sure. And just that's what you get out of male too, which we like knew going in, but I grew up with just pet male dogs and I would like bird dogs are just different in general, but my pet male dogs growing up were never high strung or really any different from our female. So to me it was a big change having a dog that needed to be exercised every single day. Otherwise he will sit in front of us on the couch like, oh my gosh, you didn't take me out today. But no, he's really good now. The other got a cut on his paw the other day, so he's been in a cone and kind of just like bed rest, but he's just been sleeping every day, which I can't believe. Like a year ago, I would never think that he'd just sleep all day and be okay with it. But he loves running around. He's swimming now. It's still like 40 degrees here some days and he'll still swim. He just loves being out and around as much as he can.
And you got to see Penny is from Buck, correct?
Yep, exactly. I think she's Reggie. I saw her in the house and I was like, nope, that's what we need. I mean, you saw Otto in the house. He's very like, oh my gosh, what's going on? And what do we do? And who do we check out? Uh, I was trying to think because I feel like he just saw his first cat today. Really, besides Steve had cats, but they kind of stayed hidden. But he saw his like first cat today and was like insane, running around the house, like looking out the window trying to find it. He's also in like a little bit of a war with a fox that's living under our neighbor's shed. So they're definitely like marking each other's territory over and over. They had like a stare down yesterday, which was a little scary, but yeah, I don't even know how I got off on that tangent. But yeah, oh yeah, cats. Just grouped the fox right in. But yeah, no, Penny was gosh, so good. I love seeing her and seeing her demeanor, seeing her out in the field. She's still young too, but it was just nice to see.
For someone wanting to get into duck hunting, what are your tips for starting?
Ooh.
I want to know this because I've been interested in duck hunting because the short hairs, they're versatile. Anytime we do like water work or like work with ducks, like Ramsey's all about it.
Aw.
So I've been like trying to like look into it and like go in that direction a little bit to see about maybe getting one of them into hunting.
Yeah, no, that'd be super cool. Unfortunately, you're already married. I was gonna say find someone that's already got all the duck gear. That's what I did, which is really nice. But like, if any of your friends have decoy, it's just a really expensive part of hunting to get into. And so if you have someone that, has decoys, has a boat, we don't, but we just wade hunt and basically shore hunt. We'll sit on some kind of smaller ponds for wood ducks. We're pretty much doing wood duck and then early season up here. So some wade hunting, but not too much. So having someone that has access to decoys, because it is just expensive to get into. He does all the calling. I am not. I don't want to learn how to call because then I'll have to do it, which I really like. But yeah, just finding folks that have the experience and knowledge to get into it. And then for me, I just bought like $100 Tidewee waders and they're totally great. Like I love them. They're insulated. I've never really been cold in them. And then we usually set up like group hunts. So we'll do, sometimes just the two of us, but otherwise it's like 4 to 6 people total, which I like because then you're hanging out if you're waiting for ducks for a while or, people are all bringing different gear that they have. So we have mallard and teal decoys, but then some of our friends will bring other decoys they have. So just kind of getting that mix and getting that experience with people. And then he sets up my guns for me, but I use the choke that makes me have a wider pattern. But I've been a pretty good shot with ducks, which is questionable to me, with pheasants being so much bigger. But ducks, I've just had a lot of good luck. especially with teal when we were teal hunting early season. It seemed like our big group that went. It was just me and my fiance that actually got into teal out of our whole group. But that would be my big thing. A big one for us was just exposure for Otto to be on his stand and be quiet and, you know, be prepared to like watch birds hit the water and not jump right out. He's still working on that. He gets just really excited when he knows that there's a bird to go get, but he's gotten a lot better. So just working with the dogs, making sure that, you know, they know what you're in for. We'll take his stand out to just some ponds and stuff and set it up and work with him out there. You know, throw decoys out, make sure the dogs can get through the decoys, and then yeah, just hopefully finding someone that's got some decoys for you. Not that they're entirely necessary, you know, if you scout and find places that birds are going to, but they definitely help.
Not this year. Last year, when I went to South Carolina with our friends, they have retrievers and they have Wild River kennels. So that's basically that's all they train is retrievers. And they had the decoys in the pond, and I was throwing bumpers out in the pond for the boys to get. And Ramsey got stuck, like caught up in one of the lines for
Yep.
the decoys, and his eyes got like this big and he just booked it to the shore. And I was like, "You're gonna be fine, buddy."
Yeah. Yeah, you're gonna be fine. Just make it through. No, that's
Yeah.
funny. Definitely that can be I feel like the trickiest part for dogs is just getting tangled or you know sometimes Otto can get confused at if he's swimming out if multiple ducks fall if it's a decoy or a duck not that he's not picking up decoys but he'll be like searching for the duck and sometimes you know if it lands in a weird spot he might miss it but like I said, he's just a retrieving machine is what I call him. Like I said, he'll swim when it's like 30 degrees out, which I don't really understand. Willingly, like we don't even have to throw a bumper. He'll just climb in and go swimming. It's like his favorite thing too.
That's how we have pet ducks. And like the boys know the difference, but like if they're out in the yard, they I tell them leave the ducks alone and they leave them alone. But if I'm not paying attention to Mo, any chance he gets, he's like going around the pond or he's like in the pond swimming after the ducks. And it could
Chasing
be,
them around.
yeah, the one day it was like 30 degrees out and he's in the pond swimming after the ducks. I'm like, buddy, you're not going to catch them.
Yep, no. No, we want to get chickens, but that's I'm like, gosh, Otto is just gonna have to learn the difference of chickens versus a bird he can get, which I think he would, but we're just like, all right, maybe not yet.
Yeah. I think he would because if they'll leave the ducks alone in the yard, but if like we have them retrieve like a dead duck or
Yep.
they're all for it. Like if I let them go get the ducks, they're going to go get them.
Yep.
But since they know mom says no,
Yep.
it's like, all right. What is your favorite game harvested?
Ooh, gosh, that's a hard question just because like all of them have very different meanings and use. Um, Probably just like my favorite game I've harvested was my archery buck, just because, like I said, it was just a really high and low season of a lot of work, a lot of sits. And when it like all came together, I was sitting in just a stand on public and I kept thinking like, oh, this was not a good place to sit this morning. Like I just don't even feel good about it. And like 5 minutes later, this 8 point just walked out and I was like, no way. I drew back and was like waiting for him to take one more step and he stood right behind like a tree branch that was covered in leaves. And I was like, I don't even know what to do. Like I'm drawn back. He was 9 yards from me. I was like, if I go down, I'm not gonna be able to pull back if he steps out. So I had to hold my bow out and it felt like probably a minute. And then he finally took a step. And when I like shot my bow, I was like, oh, I felt good about the shot, but I don't know. I had wounded a deer earlier in the season, so I was questioning it a lot. We had actually met someone that was doing blood track training with their dog, so we just called him just for safe measure. I think I sat up in the tree stand for like 2.5 hours after I harvested the deer, so just highs and lows of, you know, that whole waiting period of, oh, was it good? Was it not? I don't know where the deer is. This might be like a terrible track. And the dog didn't even have to track. Like the deer basically just went to the bottom of the ridge, which was great. But it was just like such a great experience to, really start bow hunting and learning how to use a bow in May, and kind of having the whole cycle completed by November, was just super crazy. Probably my favorite. And then it's just nice to be able to like eat that and know that that's something that I harvested, that I was able to provide, for us to consume for, the next year. And then with me working in the deer disease world, like it was so nice. I have a kit in my car. I just sampled the deer right there and sent it in. So it was a really easy process to kind of do things both personally for me and then professionally. Like got to put another sample towards my professional job, which was nice. So that was probably my favorite to harvest. It was super cool. It was my first year hunting the rut. So actually seeing like those differences in deer behavior and deer activity, I'd say.
What's your most favorite item to take hunting?
Ooh. Most
I
favorite.
got lots of hard questions.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, gosh, pheasant hunting, funny enough, like I always carry, Otto's water bottle, but then I always try to carry like a bunch of snacks in my vest. And those can like range wildly. I take a lot of those honey stinger waffles, which I love. They're just easy to eat while you're running around. So that's probably like my favorite thing to always keep in my pheasant vest, I'd say. And then deer hunting, I just try to keep as many layers as possible so you can take stuff on and off as you need. And then I have bone conducting headphones, so sometimes I bring those out, which I really like, so you can listen to a podcast or listen to music fairly quietly and still be able to hear everything that's going around you. So probably not the best answers, but those would be, I'd say, probably some of my favorite things to bring. I try really hard not to play on my phone at all or anything when I'm out hunting. I feel like it's just a good time to be out experiencing nature and figuring out what's going on around you.
And then my last question is, who's been an inspiration in your life for hunting now that you've gotten started?
Gosh, it's going to be like almost cringy to say, and when my fiance listens to this, he'll probably be like, gosh. But I'd say him. So he's the state deer biologist for Iowa. His name is Jace Elliott, but he's just been like probably my biggest inspiration just because how supportive he's been through everything. And he was telling me like he harvested his biggest buck to year this year, or biggest buck to date this year. And he told me like his favorite harvests this year were all of mine, which is just like so sweet. And like it's almost, I get jealous at times because he can go out and sit and, harvest a deer in one sit, and it took me 15 to 20 sits to do the same thing. But he's been so inspirational in the fact of like helping me with my bow and everything I need there, helping me sight in my guns. He, takes the time to like walk me through field dressing my deer, field dressing anything that I harvest, all of the processing of all of our harvests, which is really great. I've really enjoyed. Sometimes I may say, I don't know how to field dress so well, so then he'll do it, which is even better. But yeah, he's just been really inspirational to watch. He's been, hunting for forever probably, but it always warms my heart that like he's willing to not hunt today so I can go out, or we try to let each other do things like that. But it's just been really great, and he's always like super excited when I call him and I'm like, hey, I need help, I got one down, or he'll basically drop everything and run out to come help me, which has just been really great.
That was my last question for you.
Cool. No, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thanks for coming on.
Of course, anytime.
Thank you for listening to the Lonesome Willow podcast. To keep up to date on all things Lonesome Willow, you can find us on Instagram at LonesomeWillow_podcast, Lonesome Willow _Gundogs, Facebook under Lonesome Willow Gundogs, YouTube to watch the video version under Lonesome Willow Gundogs. If you know someone that would love to tell their story or you would like to tell yours, please reach out. I cannot wait to keep growing this amazing bird dog community.